Welcome back, everybody. I promise I have not turned into an Oompa Loompa. It's just the light coming through. We have bright sunshine here in Wisconsin, finally. Some nice temperatures. Anyway, I do appreciate everybody being here. I want to give a special shout out, obviously, to all of my subscribers because I passed a milestone yesterday with my YouTube channel, and it has grown immensely in the last month. And I really do appreciate that. One of my shorts has actually gotten almost 1,800 plus views, and that's amazing for me. That's amazing. I know there's people out there that do a million plus views, but I'm happy with 1,800. Anyway, today's set of videos, and I mean that in depth, there are going to be four videos that all go together here, and they are going to cover a subject that a lot of people know about, but very few people understand, and it is the 1909 Lincoln Cent. And everybody knows that in 1909, the release of the Lincoln Cent happened, and we have literally 115 plus years going on 115 plus years of the Lincoln Cent in all sorts of different variations and forms, different reverses, but the obverse for the most part has stayed pretty much the same. So, we are going to dive into the very beginning of that, and I am really hoping you guys are going to enjoy this little walk down memory lane and a little bit of history right along with it, because there are some interesting things that happened that most people are unaware of when it comes to the Lincoln wheat cent. So, here we go, shall we? We're going to start with the story of the obverse, the front of the coin, which depicts Lincoln on it. And it was decided, this is new for the mint, by the way. The mint had never put a president on a coin before. So this is the very first time a president will ever appear on a coin in United States coinage, was the Lincoln cent. And how he got there was a little bit of an interesting story. Victor Brenner had actually done some work for the mint before in designing a medal, a Lincoln medal, as a matter of fact. And what you see on your screen is indeed that medal. It looks very similar to that of the Lincoln cent, doesn't it? But this particular medal is quite a bit bigger in size, number one. Number two, if you look real close, you're going to notice a couple of things. You're going to notice that down by his shoulder, it extends quite a bit further down. His coat extends quite a bit further down. And all of these things are kind of important as we go forward with this story. But that was what was primarily the start of the Lincoln cent. So, without getting into too much detail here, because that will just bore you guys to death, let's just skip to the part here where he was asked to also design the reverse of the coin. And this was where things kind of went sideways a little bit, because they knew that they wanted the president on the front of the coin, but they didn't really know what they wanted on the back of the coin. And when you're designing a coin, it's significantly different than designing a medal. There are certain things and guidelines and rules you have to follow for coins versus a medal, in terms of the diameter of the coin, the diameter of the design, in terms of the depth of the coin. There are all sorts of things, but let's just put it this way: designing a medal versus designing a coin essentially means that metals don't go through vending machines, they don't go through cash registers and regular commerce the way a coin does. So there are certain restrictions that have to be met. And designing the reverse meant designing a coin or a reverse of a coin that had a design on it that was going to work in the coin presses. And so some of the first designs that Brenner sent in for his reverse were this one. And as you can see, it looks okay. Not a lot going on to it. This was just a sketch. You can see this is actually on Mint Treasury letterhead, and the problem with this particular one is it was a copy basically of a French 2 franc, or a 2-cent franc, if you want to call it such. That didn't really appeal to the mint at all. They didn't want to copy the French with their coin. So they asked him to come up with another design, and that's what you see right here. So that design is starting to show signs of what we're looking for the reverse design. And if you look real close, his letters that he used actually start to mimic some of the letters that I'll show you in a little while on the reverse of the coin as to what the very first design was. And yeah, I'm referring to the fact that, believe it or not, there were actually two reverse designs that were used in 1909. And that's where all of this is going to lead as to what happened with the first reverse and why they decided they needed a second reverse. As you can see, it's dark behind me. I had to eat dinner, but let's press on with the bomb that I just dropped, which is that, yeah, there are two distinct designs of the reverse of the 1909 Lincoln cent. Now, the reason for this is Brenner didn't take into account the fact that he needed to make the coin, or the dies, if you want to call it such. He didn't make the dies, but he made the image that subsequently made the dies. It's what's called a Galvano. And that particular design didn't take into account that the coin's surfaces or the die's surfaces needed to press deep into the planchet that was in the die press in order to allow the metal to flow correctly, which also means that the coin was a certain thickness. So the design that you see on your screen is what we refer to as a type 1 design. I will explain a little bit more what differentiates a type 1 design from a type 2 design a little bit later. But as you can see in this particular picture has two stacks on the left that are much taller than the stack that are on the right. Well, believe it or not, there's 20 coins in each one of these stacks, and the coin stack on the right is the type 1 reverse. The two stacks on the left are type 2. So what that essentially means here is that these coins were causing problems, or were going to cause problems, in coin vending machines. Now, remember, they just started minting these coins on June 10th of 1909, after everything had been said and done. Believe it or not, the coin actually had not even been approved by the president and or other people in the Bureau of Engraving and Printing of the Treasury Department to actually release the coin. That wouldn't come for almost a month into July, but they started minting them in June of 1909. What we discovered as part of the research group that I'm a part of, called the Rabbit Hole Research Group, which I'll get to in a little later episode of this, we discovered that they took Brenner's original design and they realized that it wasn't working right. They were having problems in the presses. The coins weren't coming out minted correctly. Obviously, they were too thin. On top of that, the dies were breaking prematurely, and so they needed to try and figure out what was going on. The first thing that they did was they took the original design that Brenner did and they went to work on it. They actually tried to change and clean up some of the letters because the letters were just too thick. They were causing metal flow issues. That was what they thought was the main problem here, was the metal flow issues because the letters were the wrong thickness. Now, what you see on your screen is the very first version of the 1909 reverse Lincoln cent, the type 1. We call this, or I guess I call this, the fat type 1, if you want to call it such, because the letters themselves are actually kind of thicker and heavier than the cleaned up version, which you see right here, where they actually wound up taking the original type 1 reverse and cleaning up those letters. So we're getting to the end of this video, which is explaining all about the type 1 reverse that you have seen. And you've now seen it go from its original state to its cleaned up version at the end of it. And that cleaned up version, to give you an idea time frame wise, what we're talking about here, remember, they started minting coins on June 10th. By about June 20th, 10 days later, they knew they had a problem, and in that time frame somewhere they basically cleaned up the back of the reverse and tried to clean up the letters on it, which is what I call the thin type 1, if you want to call it such. And they put that into the presses and started minting those. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to come to a close on this particular video. You now know about the type 1 reverse as to what it is, what it looks like. This particular reverse is the only reverse that you will find on the 1909 S VDB Lincoln cent. The type 2 reverse, which we're going to cover in the next video, should never ever show up on a 1909 S VDB. And this is one way that you can actually tell the difference between a real and a fake 1909 S VDB, because there are so many people that actually take a regular 1909 VDB coin and put an S on it to make it look like a 1909 S VDB. So you're going to want to definitely pay attention to the next video, which I will release probably within the next day or two. And that video will explain the type 2 reverse. Coming up on the third video in this series, we are going to talk about what happened in the interim time between the type 1 and the type 2 reverse, and how they tried to correct the dies that were already in use with the type 1 design on them. It's going to get interesting. So pay attention and tune in for the next couple of episodes. You're going to enjoy this. Have a good evening, everybody. And whatever you do, please do me a favor and remember to subscribe, to like, and to keep those notification bells on.